what BeNature is, really. And ideally, I will give you some form of scientific knowledge, some form of scientific background around BeNature, and then we'll have Louise and Kirsty giving you some professional expertise on the topic. And then we'll have Simon and Charlie giving some real rich indigenous wisdom on the topic. My name is Matteo Giusti, and I'm a researcher in regenerative sustainability. I like to study solutions. I like to study how to develop, create a sustainable, specifically a sustainable relationship with nature. In practice, this is what I'm interested in. I'm interested in shifting from an anthropocentric myth to an ecocentric reality. This is my interest. This is my goal. And I want I think we need to move away from the idea that humans are the apex of creation. Humans are different and separated from nature. Human evolution and human progress can exist separated from the rest of life. And we need to go back to what we know the reality is. We are an animal, and we are part of the web of life, and we live together and in symbiosis with the rest of life. And I want to give you a bit of an understanding of what this ecological reality is. BeNature is designed to promote this shift. BeNature is designed to promote this learning, this ecocentric learning towards this ecological reality. And I want to tell you what this ecological reality really is. And I hope you will agree with me. Our ecological reality is that we live on a rock. Yes, we live on a rock that in the last 4 billion years got moldy. And this mold is developed, evolved into bacteria, evolved into algae and plants and trees and animals, and then ecosystems and rivers and clouds. And over 4 billion years, this rock created a bubble of life around it. And this is the biosphere, is that little layer, yellow layer that you can see around Earth. This is the only place where we know there is life. And we know that this mold, this life, is what we are really part of. This is our ecological reality. We evolved from this mold, and thanks to this mold, we're still alive on this planet. This mold, this algae, these trees is what ensures that there is enough oxygen for us to breathe. This mold, these trees, and these plants ensures that we do have clean water, we do have clean air, and we live in this Goldilocks diet where humanity can thrive, where the temperature is fine, where we can develop agriculture, when we don't freeze, we don't burn, we can breathe, and all this web of life is what ensures that this is possible. And this is our ecological reality. This is the ecological reality that maintains the right level of oxygen in the atmosphere and the right climate for humanity to prosper. And we are part of it. And I hope you agree with this. And I want to see, really, if you still agree with this. Now, this is a little test that is used in environmental psychology. And I want you to choose the diagram that best describe your relationship with nature. And then I want you to make a sign. Raise your hand. You here? You here? You can raise your hand with a sign. You here? You here? You here? Yes? You here? You here? Now, I have a question for you. What is this part of you? Most people answer in these three diagrams. And this is true for almost everybody I've done this test with, which is probably now to over 1,000 people. What is that part of you that is in nature? Our bodies are composed of roughly 45% of human cells, and the other 55% are bacteria that use our body for shelter, and we use them to digest food and keep healthy. So we are not even half human ourselves. We're more like zoos for bacteria than anything else. So why if we agree with our ecological reality that we are evolved mode, why don't we agree? Why do we agree that there is a distinction to be made between us and nature? This isn't really a reflection of our ecological reality. And this is because this is a story that we believe. This is part of our social reality. This is a story that we believe is true. And this story is cultural. This is the definition of nature that you have used to answer my question. It's the phenomenon of the physical world collectively, plants, animals, the landscape, and other features and products of the earth, as opposed to humans and human creation. By definition, we assume that there is a separation to be made between us and nature. And every time we use this word, we perpetuate this separation. This is a story we believe is reality. It's a story that we have told ourselves for a very long time indeed. Like, since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, this story became the story of how nature works. If we go back to the Industrial Revolution, if we go back to Descartes, Descartes was a firm believer that animals couldn't reason, that animals could not feel pain, that they were operating like mechanical robots. And Descartes believed, and all this philosophical movement around believed that only humans were deserving of compassion and empathy. Only humans could speak. And animals and all other natural resources could just be used and abused, really, to satisfy human pleasure. Because nature was the equivalent of machines. And you have to bear in mind that this is the time of the invention of clocks. These were machineries that looked alive, even if they weren't. And nature was considered the same, just a lifeless clock. And the earth was considered a lifeless machine, just a capital resources to use, to which we have no obligation and no dependence. This is the story that we believe. This is the story at the beginning of the Anthropocene. The story that make us believe that we are superior and disconnected from nature because we aren't a machine. We are alive and we can think and we have emotions. And this is a story that we still believe. This is the story. This is the anthropocentric myth. It's the driving force of the Anthropocene. And it would be fine to believe a story. It would be okay to believe a story, to have a shared belief, unless this become an existential threat to humanity. We cannot afford to use this false assumption to build the future of our society on Earth, on this planet, because it doesn't operate in the same way that the ecology of the planet operates. Our ecological reality tells us that if nature was indeed a lifeless machine, if nature was dead, we also would be. And believing this story is leading us in that direction. And I want you to give you like a sense of what the consequences of this story is. And I'm going to draw a parallelism here. So if we all agree that one race is superior to another, we will inevitably create a racist system, racist economic incentives, racist laws. We can discuss the price of slaves. We can, racist behaviors are normal. Because the racist assumptions are, and the racist assumptions are the cause of this normality. There is no possibility for an harmonious relationship between races if we believe that one race is superior to another. But what we're seeing from the little test that showed you, that we all agree that there is one species that is superior to all other species. And indeed, we can discuss the price of land. We can discuss the price of animals. We can discuss the price of entire ecosystem because we consider them as commodities, as objects, not as community of living beings. So unsustainable economic incentives, unsustainable laws, unsustainable systems are normal. That is the normality because we have unsustainable assumptions, because we believe the anthropocentric myth. And the anthropocentric myth is the cause of this normality. Our whole economies, our whole political systems, our whole businesses are based on the assumption that Earth is a lifeless machine and that we are not part of it. So there will never be a sustainable relationship between all species on Earth if we believe that one is superior or disconnected to another. This is the anthropocentric myth. Now, what I've tried to, I hope I gave you a sense of why this matters, why we need to shift from the anthropocentric myth to our ecocentric reality. How do we do that is what I've been trying to work on. And I'm not saying this is easy. I don't think I have a solution. Shifting from anthropocentrism to ecocentrism is a revolution. It's the same to convince people that the Earth is not at the center of the universe, but that we rotate around the sun. This is a Copernican revolution that we're trying to promote, and that learning is cultural, is paradigmatically important. But this is what I call ecocentric learning. This is what I call the process of moving away from the anthropocentric myth. What I've done, what I've studied, what I started doing was to provide some academic foundation to this learning process. So I first did a systematic literature review of everything that is being written on human-nature connection. And I've been trying to understand every single line here is a little paper published. So I've synthesized or analyzed, let's say, not synthesized, everything, all publications written between 1984 and 2015. And we can see that there are three different ways of interpreting in academia, of interpreting nature connection. Nature connection is an attribute of the mind. Environmental psychology is a psychological connection to an abstract form of nature, is an emotional, is a cognitive attachment, etc., etc. Human nature connection is an experience. This comes from anthropology. Is a meaningful experience in a very specific place that gives meaning to people. And the human nature connection is also an attachment to a place, human geography, sociology. This is a bunch of literature that will tell us that we develop a connection, an attachment, a sense of place, an identification with specific landscapes, with specific features that are part of our nature routines. And I'm trying to combine, BeNature kind of aims to combine these different disciplinary grounds. And it combines this with professional knowledge. What I've done after was to interview and survey 200 international organizations about what is connection with nature, what constitutes this connection, what constitutes this ecocentrism that we're aiming at, and how do we see that in reality? What do we learn first and what do we learn after? And based on this knowledge, based on this academic foundation, based on this synthesis of professional knowledge, there was one clear message that resulted, that ecocentric learning, this process of moving away from an anthropocentric myth, is a set of competences that can be progressively built together with the socio-ecological system in which we live. It's not an abstract form of nature. It's not a perfect final state. It's a progressive capacity of the body, of the mind to act and to be in a specific place. And that's why I focus on much more on becoming nature rather than connecting or relating to nature. Now, here there are other articles that set the theoretical foundations, that set the validation, the validation of this theoretical framework in forest bathing, forest preschools, and rural education. But I believe this is a bit the essence of what distinguishes BeNature from other approaches. And I want to give you a sense in practice of what this looks like. We said that this is a progression of competences. So this is the progression of phases. This is the progression of competences that I have identified. We all know what living from nature means. That's what we do every day. We consider nature as a pool of resources to live from. And we create our temporary prosperity from this pool of resources. And then we need to develop this capacity, this ability to be in nature first. That's our first step, to be comfortable there. And then based on this capacity, we can develop the possibility to be with nature, develop the possibility to interact with the natural environment in a way that doesn't harm the natural environment, doesn't harm us either. And once we have reached that phase, then we can develop the competencies and the abilities to act for nature. Use our energy, our knowledge, our ability, our technologies to improve the health and well-being of ecosystem, the health and well-being of plants, the ecosystem that surrounds the landscape that surrounds us. And ultimately, this is probably where a collaboration with Jean-Jacques ended up being the most valuable, was that we need to learn how to be nature. We need to learn how to act as nature, how to be part of this community of life. Now, for each of these phases, there are more specific competences to build, more specific abilities to develop. So being in nature is indeed comfort, is indeed curiosity. And then being with nature is our capacity to interact with the natural environment in the same way that a surfer interacts with a wave. It's not just in the ocean, is with the ocean, it plays with the ocean. Or in the same way that the climber plays with the climbing wall. It's not just in a natural environment. It has the capacity to interact with it. And then here we have some form of ecological literacy that is needed. We have ties with natural places that are specific, that is in a specific place. And then we have the ability to create memories and epiphanies, moments that shape our identity in the future. This is a life-changing moment of insight, of realization, that shapes who we are as people. And then we move towards develop the capacity to be for nature, not only with nature. We develop empathy for nature, the capacity to feel bad emotions when we see bad emotions in a non-human life. We develop the capacity to be stewards of nature. We use our energy, our resources to act for the well-being of ecosystems and plants and animals, etc. And we mobilize others to do the same. We become leaders. And this is the last phase, ideally, of ecocentric learning. This is where we embed these learnings in our person, in our identity. We become part of this ecological legacy that spans not only with our lives, but as part of this long evolutionary process, as part of this long history of life that is on planet Earth. Now, these are competences that are fundamental to create some process of ecocentric learning. From the academic, this academic and professional synthesis of knowledge that I've created, we've also seen that nature experiences are very different from each other, but they share meaningful attributes. When they're meaningful, they share some attributes. Now, climbing a cactus is not the same as climbing a tree for your connection with nature, but meaningful nature experiences tend to have similar attributes. And this can be used to design better and richer nature experiences and to evaluate nature experiences and nature activities that are done. I don't want to go into details of this, but this list and everything else is in the guide. Now, the last thing that I wanted to share with you was how BeNature is different from other things that you've seen, really. And there are a variety of different reasons for this. The first reason is because BeNature is transdisciplinary science-based. It's not based on a single discipline, and it's not practice-based. This means that it's not based on the insights of one discipline, but a dozen, and is not bounded to the limits of single disciplines. So it doesn't follow the idea of nature connectedness or human-nature connection, where there is a psychological connection with an abstract form of nature. BeNature embeds anthropology and human geographers and tells you that these capacities is not just a psychological connection, but is an ability to be in a place. Again, we're not proposing to connect with nature. We're proposing to learn to be nature. And it's also science-based in the sense that it's not practice-based. It's not based on the wisdom and the insights of a single practitioner that have worked in the field for like decades and have a lot of insights, but is based on this transdisciplinary knowledge system. It's progressive, and it doesn't aim to promote an idealistic perfection. We're not aiming to make people hug trees the first time that they enter a forest. There is a progress to develop. We aim for progress and not perfection, because we need to move away from the current way in which we live. We live from nature, and we have to take the first step. And the first step isn't the idealistic perfection, is just being comfortable in a natural environment. And this is the reason why we contextualize these competences. It's not a one-size-fits-all form of universalism. These are competences that need to be learned and acted in a social and ecological space. They don't exist unless they're embedded in a place and culture. So this is to focus on local relevance, is to ensure that these competences are scalable and they are place sensitive, really. We focus on providing a practical approach, not just concepts and frameworks. This is because, I mean, BeNature is an approach built to learn how to become an ecological citizen, okay? And the idea that we have several steps and several competences to reach that competence allow us to create curriculum, create toolkits, create training programs. If we focus only on nature connectedness, we will only have a number from 1 to 10 as a result that is not going to be actionable. It's not going to be actionable because what we need to learn in order to pass from 1 to 2 is not the same as what we need to learn in order to pass from 8 to 9. So the aim of BeNature is to create a progressive platform that can be a practical approach, and it's not just a concept and framework. And it focuses on a systematic transformation, not just personal connection. It's not just my connection with nature, is my capacity to be a steward, my capacity to be a leader, is my capacity to act in a social ecological context and create that change. And this is the last thing that I don't think I can claim that, but it aims at least to be comprehensive of all the knowledge that exists on this from an academic, professional, and with some indigenous insights. There's absolutely no, I do not make the claim that this is a comprehensive of indigenous knowledge at all. But it aims to be comprehensive. It aims to be just. It aims to be decolonized and not only Western-centric. Now, this is what BeNature is. At the end of the day, in 3 words, aims to be a science-based benchmark to both design and evaluate ecocentric learning. Now, I gave you so many, I think I've talked a lot already. So I want to stop here for a second, and you will be able to listen to someone else now about what this means in practice, and with practical examples, because I provide you so much theory, so much concepts, so many frameworks, but this has value in practice and has to have value in practice. So I want to pass the word to Louise Shorthouse and Kirsty Porter from the Surrey Wildlife Trust. They will tell you probably in better words than I have done what this means.
Thank you. Shall I share my screen, Matteo?
Yes, please.
Somebody give us a thumbs up. You can see it in a moment. Okay,
yes,
is that working?
So good.
Fantastic. So I'm Louise, and this is Kirsty.
Good morning.
We are Matteo's critical friends who have given him what this work is like in the real world of practitioners and helped to shape the guide that way. So I'm originally an environmental consultant. 30 years ago, I started working with engineering companies, and then 20 years ago, frustrated with the consultancy world and working with engineers who didn't want to protect nature, I decided to go into environmental education and started working with the Wildlife Trust. And Kirsty has over 30 years experience as a teacher and has worked for the Wildlife Trust for about
the last 14, I think.
14, 15 years. So we've been here for a long time. And at Surrey Wildlife Trust, our role is to deliver education. We call ourselves Team Wilder. We have schools up for one-day visits on our beautiful ancient woodland nature reserve. We have adult learning courses where we train adults in how to look after habitats, identify species, or just connect a bit with nature. We have informal education centres, education activities in the form of holiday clubs for children and teenagers, and we deliver family activities and events across our estate, which comprises 80 nature reserves. More recently, we've changed from just delivering one-day visits for children to a bigger project, which we call Wilder Schools, where we work more intensively with a school. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that project in a moment. But the Wildlife Trust is comprised of 46 different charities across the United Kingdom, and we're just one of them. Most of them are county-based or a collection of 2 or 3 counties working together. And we all have the same mission, and that is to make sure that we do reach 30 by 30. That is to restore and protect 30% of land and sea for nature by 2030. And that is what our government signed up to at the Global Biodiversity Framework at COP15 in 2022. So that's become our mission. And we wanted to make sure that the role of the education team or Team Wilder was to contribute to that mission. So Matteo asked us to think about how the work we do has been influenced by BeNature. And I think the first thing that really struck us was that list of attributes and the idea of attributes, because if we just think of our one-day visits, we got people coming up to us 20 or 30 years later telling us how they really remembered their day at Narwood. And we thought, what was making this such a memorable session? And so the idea of attributes really helped us understand that. So if we take, for example, something we do just over half a day, we do a mini beast safari, and lots of practitioners do things like this, looking at little creatures we might explore under logs. So we would start a session with a game or a talk or a story, and we would spend time outside in the woods exploring, allowing the children to do that. They would learn how to identify creatures. They would build sculptures of the creatures to help them with the idea of classification. We would then challenge them to be a mini beast themselves. We'd blindfold them and let them imagine they were a creature out at night. And then we'd take creatures back to the classroom and put them under the microscope and show them in so much detail what these creatures were like. And so if we think about that session with the attributes that Matteo's work had identified, then that session has aspects that are structured and aspects that are guided. The games bring fun, and that discovery is fun as well. It's very physical. They're running around, they're out in the woods. It's sensory. They are touching the creatures. They're using natural materials. They encounter wildlife, another attribute. Sometimes they're very surprised by what they find. Aspects of that session were creative. The blindfold trail was very challenging for little children, and what they discovered was enlightening. And so lots of different attributes meant that those sessions were really rich, and that explained why those sessions were really memorable and impactful for people. But then when we think of our Wilder Schools project, which is when Matteo first contacted us because he'd heard about Wilder Schools, we'd come up with this project because we'd come out of lockdown. We knew that people really valued being outside after being shut up over the pandemic. And we wanted to make sure that children had access in their school grounds to nature-rich habitats. And so we developed this program so that not only could we ensure that children developed a meaningful connection with nature, but we could help them enhance their school grounds for nature. And we could work with the teachers to make sure that outdoor learning happened in schools. We showed them how to do it. We supported them, got rid of the barriers. And what we wanted to do as a wildlife trust was to connect nature across the county. So we worked from the schools out into the community so that we could help build those corridors for nature. And so basically, the World of Schools programme, the children will do a bio-blitz of the school grounds, find out what's there. They'll learn from us about the state of nature and what needs to happen to improve the state of nature. They have a vision of how their school grounds could look. We help them develop that vision into a project. They raise awareness of that project in their community, and then they implement that project and monitor it to see how it's done. And if you think about this nature connection pathway that's identified in BeNature, when we were doing our one-day visits, we were only focusing where the red arrow is, and children were developing a comfort and curiosity about nature. But now with this new project, we realized that we could really push children along that nature connection pathway to being for nature, because we found that by developing these habitats in the school grounds, they were becoming stewards for nature and really caring about the habitats that they were creating. So from a Wildlife Trust point of view, we were really starting to contribute to the goal of 30 by 30, whereas before, although important and a rich nature experience, the one-day visits on their own weren't helping the Wildlife Trust to achieve their mission. What we also learnt and became explained by the work we did with Matteo was that working with teenagers, as we'd done it before, wasn't working, and we started to understand why. For example, on the left, you can see a meadow area that we've removed the turf. We asked teenagers to come out and help us to do that. They hadn't been involved, because when you work with a secondary school, you may be working with 300 plus students in a year group, and you can't take them all on that journey in the time we have. So we asked one class to do the bio-blitz. One class came out and created the habitat. Another class we asked to do the monitoring. And what we found is that really didn't work, because the students we asked to dig the meadow had no interest in it. They didn't know why they were doing it. It was a cold, wet day, because this work has to be done in the winter time or early spring, and they really didn't enjoy it. So they didn't ever want to find out whether that habitat had developed. They just didn't get it. And so we changed our approach to working with teenagers. We recognised also that they just weren't comfortable coming outside. Somewhere between primary school and secondary school, they had learnt to disconnect with nature, and they were more worried about what their peers thought. So we looked at the types of activities you could do with teenagers. You need a challenging, fun activity if they are with their peers, so that they can all do it together. If it's more about comfort and curiosity, sometimes they just need to be on their own, doing that in their own space, so that they're not worried about what their peers are thinking. So it's really got us thinking about how we run projects with teenagers, and we'll be testing it more over the next year and using the BeNature guide to test and monitor that. And I would say having a framework to follow has really helped us, because although with the biodiversity improvements in school grounds, we can map those and record those on geographical information systems, one thing we couldn't do was track how that nature connection was developing with children. And this has given us a tool to start using. I wouldn't say it was perfect yet, but it's given us something to work on. And hopefully the more people that start using it, the more perfect it will be in the future. And I think that's the end of what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to hand over to Kirsty.
So we thought, seeing as our whole webinar is about building those relationships with nature, we might give you a little taster of some of the practical ideas that we have in the guide as part of that journey. So we've got about 10 minutes, but I think perhaps, Matteo, we might reduce that to 5 minutes, looking at the time on the clock. And this activity is one that's in the guide that we felt was a simple, practical thing that you could do with any groups that you were working with to help build ties with natural places and get people through that phase of really being with nature. And So we're going to ask you to spend some time and write a letter to a tree. Now, if you can see a tree outside your window, that will be absolutely amazing for you to gaze at as you write. And the idea behind this was to get people building relationships with the living communities around their places that they lived or worked or went to school in. And trees have real meaning for people. So we would like you to think about either write into your tree and you can tell it how you're feeling today, or use it as a way to get your kind of thoughts and ideas across. Or perhaps you could ask the tree some questions about how it's managing with the really dry weather that we're experiencing in the UK, for example, or if you're somewhere else in the world, maybe you're in a different season, and perhaps talk to it about how it's coping with those seasons. And we're just going to give you 5 minutes to go and do that. So if you can get a pen and paper handy.
If you haven't got a tree.
Yeah, if you haven't got a tree, then maybe write to one that maybe is missing from your community. Perhaps there's somewhere you have seen that perhaps needs some more trees planting, or there's something that's happened where the trees have been lost. So you could write to a missing or lost tree.
Okay, so if we're back at just after 20 past 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. 20 past 10. Let's find let's go and look at a tree.
Yeah.
You can use the one on our screen if you haven't got one in front of you.
I'm gonna go and find a tree.
Okay, I hope we haven't lost anybody.
Although if you're busy deep in thought right into your tree, that's part of the idea behind it. So I hope that you can see that through doing that activity, and we will probably revisit it with the groups that we work with as well, so they could maybe write letters at different seasons or year on year, and they can really build that relationship with that living thing that's part of their community. And if you think about the depth of feeling that was generated, if you were in the UK and you saw the story about the sycamore gap tree that was felled and how deeply people felt about that, then building those ties with natural places and things like trees in their community is really a powerful tool to help people on their growing relationships with nature journey. So that's just one example of the practical things that are in the guide that you might be able to use. So my role at the Trust focuses most on working with our network of teachers that we've built up through our Wilder Schools programme. We have over 700 teachers that I regularly send out newsletters to and run courses for, and go out and deliver inset training in schools and staff meetings to the schools that are part of our programme. And we set out with the aim of that being to get more teachers outside, taking their students out and benefiting from all the proven benefits that brings. So there's so much research out there about how good outdoor learning is as a tool for students developing in their physical and mental health, developing social skills. It improves their focus in lessons and ultimately leads to better academic progress and attainment also. So that was our hope. So our vision on the left was that lots of our Wilder schools would take on that mantra, and that we'd be going back term on term and seeing more and more outdoor learning happening. But in reality, that wasn't what we saw on the ground. We had some really passionate teachers who took that on board and really ran with it. But on reflection, since understanding and helping Matteo write the BeNature guide and the toolkit, we realised that those teachers were the ones who were already quite a long way along their nature relationship journey, and they'd already passed many of those milestones, whereas we had a lot of teachers that we were working with, and it was hard to see that our efforts weren't paying off. And we realised that actually they weren't at the right stage in their relationship with nature, and they lost their connection, and that's why it wasn't working so well. So it's really helped us shape our delivery to our teachers too. So we were kind of realizing that a lot of the teachers we were working at were where the red arrow is, and that actually they weren't comfortable or curious about nature, and that we really needed to work with that before we could be expecting them to deliver sessions that were inspiring the young people they were working with to take action and be more where the blue arrow is in being for nature and being those leaders for us. So we shifted our focus slightly, and it tied in really well with the greater weighting of senior leadership teams in schools being with looking after the mental health of their staff and the happiness of their staff. So we have been working with looking at staff meetings where teachers are going out and doing nature activities which benefit those things too. So maybe doing some forest bathing or working with doing some nature journaling and just building their comfort and their curiosity with nature. And for CPD sessions, those continuing professional development sessions, especially for things like science, we could really focus on building ecological literacy and making sure that our teachers understood that before they were trying to deliver it to the students they were working with. So we're using the school grounds to help move them along through those milestones and grow their relationship with nature. Once they've moved through them, they'll be in a much better place to be those leaders and bring their students along with them. So it's kind of shaped our way of delivering that. And then we just came up with some really simple things that teachers could do with their students, but for themselves too, to begin that journey and generate that comfort and curiosity. So whether it might be having a morning starter slide, like in the top left-hand corner of your slide, where there's a question for the students to answer. With this one, they had to look for the links between the pictures, and they were all pollinators. And then the teachers themselves were doing a bit of research into that and learning with the students alongside, having a nature table in the classroom where there could be that kind of to and fro no conversation between the students and the adults in the classroom. So they could bring something in that they'd found, or the children might be asking a question, or perhaps doing some nature journaling, which again can be a shared task where both the staff and the adults might dip into that. And with the older students, using some kind of either a social media app to kind of share things on, and try and build those connections and progress through the milestones. So those were just some quick ideas for quick wins, alongside maybe when children need a break from their learning, going out and having a brain break in nature, which is good for the teachers because they're getting out to the green spaces, and also good for the students too. So we've got kind of the ideas of pondering pathways where they're asking questions and noticing things in nature. And this little one on the bottom right was a school that were particularly focusing on developing hedgehog habitats in their grounds. So we gave them some, not real hedgehogs, they would have loved that, to take on nature journeys outside of school, so spreading it out into their community, and the teachers could go along with that too. Then this slide I put in because there was also a moment when we were looking at developing the toolkit where we realised that for teachers it was really important for them to measure their impact and evaluate the progress their students were making, not only on the nature connection journey side of things, but with all of these activities there can be an impact on the behaviour of the students. And one of the things that Ofsted, the inspectorate in the UK and England, look at is personal development goals. So one of the toolkit forms you can use to look at where children are on that. So that was a very useful thing for teachers to be able to use and then compare, so they could go back to their senior leadership team and show what impact the sessions had had from those perspectives too. So it's just really helped us to focus in and make sure that our sessions and our planning is as impactful as possible.
Yeah, that's it. Matteo, over to you.
Oh yes, well that was really nice to hear you talking about BeNature, and I think I pass directly the mic to Simon and Shirley, and I'm really looking forward to hear their perspective on this.
Thank you, guys. Great to be here with you tonight, all the way from Australia. We've got a few slides just to share a bit with you about Indigenous Australians, or in particular the Dja Dja Wurrung people's connection with country, as they call it. And Charlie can kick us off.
Thank you, Simon, and thanks, Matteo. Yeah, and it was great hearing about more about what's happening, I guess, internationally and other projects. So hope you learn a little bit what's the most of our First Nations and community are doing down here in Australia. As Simon mentioned, connection to country. So connection to country doesn't heal humans, it also heals the planet. And this is a new knowledge. Dja Dja Wurrung people have understood this for more than 65,000 years. Our knowledge isn't written in books, it's written in stone and in song and smoke. It's in the leaves and in the breeze. It's carried by our ancestors. So it's not a target or a policy, it's more of a relationship. A relationship with the land and the water, the people, the fire, the air, the sky, the spirit, and it all cares for one another. As sort of discussed, mental health crisis and stuff. The world's currently in a bit of a crisis, but for Jara and other First Nations people in the world on Earth, this isn't new. And by listening to country and walking together, we've survived disaster, displacement, and dispossession. So today we'd like to share a little bit about connecting with country in good health, in good spirit. and sort of invite you to understand connection to country and how it nourishes people and the planet. Everything we do at JanDec, our enterprise where we work, it's all about connecting the country and understanding that and how that nourishes people and the planet. Like we do a lot of furniture spaces, a lot of spaces that support connection to country. And we're working on a project that Simon will talk a little bit more in a minute.
Yeah, as Charlie's already touched on there, she and I both work for JanDec, which is one of the enterprises of the Dja Dja Wurrung Clan's Aboriginal Corporation, which we've got some of the members up on screen there in their traditional dress. JanDec means country in Jara language, and the Jar Walat Jalang, the byline, actually means love of country, which is very relevant to our presentation today, or what this whole session is about. And in our talk, we just wanted to share with you a bit about Jara, the people, and how their deep connection to country aligns with and even goes beyond the modern science. How we're bringing both worlds together through things like the Ballot Kalak Munya or Walking Together program that Charlie just mentioned, that supports people and planet through connecting with country, and also where we plan to take this work into the future.
Thanks, Sam. I'm a proud Dja Dja Wurrung woman or traditional owner from Central Victoria. I'm living on country on my traditional lands in a little city called Bendigo in Central Victoria. So yeah, I'm really honoured to be here virtually representing the Dja Dja Wurrung people. They're always guiding it and watching sort of my every steps and our project quite closely.
But the land that we're calling in from has always been known as JanDec, or Dja Dja Wurrung country. And we'd like to pay our respects to the traditional owners of those lands that we're coming in from today, and wherever you are from. We honour the elders past and present and extend their respect to all First Nations, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us.
So Dja Dja Wurrung people officially have 18 recognised apical ancestors. They're the foundational sort of figures that and descendants that make up the families and the board today. Each ancestor connects us to a specific part of country, to our responsibilities and our stories, to our law, our LORE. Our ancestors were born before colonisation, before 1850, and they carried really deep cultural knowledge, and they endured a lot of forced relocation and extreme hardship during that colonisation. One of these people were Thomas Spinelli. He was born around the mid-1800s on Dja Dja Wurrung country, and he later became one of the first well-known Aboriginal scribes in Australian history. Spinelli's my apical ancestor. He was a writer, a leader, and a voice of the mission, or the current sort of displacement of the mission. And he sort of represents how colonial tools like writing and scribe were tools of advocacy and survival.
So Jara's connection with country isn't abstract. It's legal, cultural and practical. In 2013, the state of Victoria formally recognised the Dja Dja Wurrung people through the Dja Dja Wurrung Recognition and Settlement Agreement, which was the first agreement of its kind under the Traditional Owner Settlement Act. So it was a landmark moment in Victorian history and legally recognised Jara as the traditional owners of a large part of the state of Victoria and affirmed their ongoing and unbroken relationship with country, a connection that is spiritual, cultural and deeply rooted. This also formally recognises the responsibilities that Jara, rights and responsibilities that Jara have under the settlement agreement. And since then, Jara has led a path forward in healing and connecting with country, restoring governance and building self-determined futures for their people.
And there's a quote from the RSA that really sort of recognises that. But the other document there on the right is our Kunyajara, our country plan, and that's a strategic document that's really the foundation of connecting people to country or healing country following that disposition and colonisation. And for Jajarang people, country and people must thrive together. They can't be separated. So this document's sort of a blueprint for the work that we're doing. And yeah, it's so important that it's at the core of this document. It's sort of really about people and country thriving together.
And those are two key documents in the history of the organisation and the people that we work for. And this image on the screen brings it into the present. This is Lananguruk, or our home. It's our new headquarters, a beautiful building in Bendigo that now accommodates about 200 employees. So there's been a huge amount of growth and effort over the last 10 or 20 years, even before the signing of the recognition and settlement agreement. We've got the overarching traditional owner corporation, as well as 3 enterprises or businesses. Jandak, that Charlie and I work for, is one of those. We also have Doomawal, which is a cultural tourism and education business, and Jackitch, which is a food and fibre farming business. And we all work side by side in Lananguruk to drive self-determination and healing of Jandak.
I mentioned earlier that there was a really good quote from the Punyajala, the country plan. And it's from our former chairman, Uncle Trent Nelson. It really touches on, I think, people and country being one and connected and one and the same. And that it sort of encompasses our drive to continue that custodial responsibility and relationship to look after nature. But sort of the Jara philosophy is that when country thrives, people thrive. And when people thrive, we're more willing or capable of caring for country. It's sort of an upward spiral. It's really simple, but yeah, really powerful.
And it's really encouraging also that the modern science is now starting to catch up with Jara. I'm sure a lot of people on the call tonight have seen this graph or a version of it, showing that research into things like nature connectedness have really taken off in the last 5 or 10 years. And also showing that people with a close connection to nature, are happier, healthier, and more likely to care for it. Which is all leading to a lot of interest in improving people's connection to nature. It's now a major focus of many wellbeing and environmental plans and policies from international to local levels, including over here in Australia.
So we sort of identified a gap, or a lot of people have identified a gap, that these strategies often overlook First Nations perspectives. Our group or enterprise is, I guess, uniquely positioned to fill that gap with that cultural authority and having that lived practice and existing program experience. If Jara, so to put it sort of into perspective, if Jara presence on Earth was shown as a 12-hour clock, the colonisation would have just arrived at 11:57, just 3 minutes before midnight. And modern science has only started, about 10 seconds ago. So there's a lot to learn from what came before. Connection to country is ancestral, it's reciprocal, It's grounded in specific places, like where we care for and pass down and honor through ceremony and story. And when we put these two perspectives together and we'll start walking together, we really start to begin to fill in the gaps in that research, especially around how to foster a better long-term connection with nature. But it's very similar, but there are a lot of differences as well.
And it was good to see Matteo reflecting this in some of his earlier slides, and that the BeNature approach is starting to help address this. But comparing the JARA approach to the Western science, and it's worth saying that a lot of this applies to Indigenous science and Western science in general. But in terms of connection to the country or connection with nature, in Western science, there's things like nature connectedness, which has a strong but still emerging evidence base, as Charlie was showing in the previous clock diagram. Nature is seen as part of a person's identity, but not necessarily the core of self. And the knowledge comes from empirical research and formal education, and it's more focused on me, the individual, and usually at a single point in time. It tends to be more about nature in general, rather than a specific place. So what happens when we bring the science and cultural knowledge side by side and start walking together? We can see many opportunities to share cultures, different perspectives, to learn from each other and to help people and the planet to thrive. And we also start to begin to fill some of those recognised gaps in the scientific literature, like Charlie mentioned before, about the lack of non-Western perspectives, and in particular from Indigenous people, and also the knowledge about how to build people's connection with nature, which again ties in really well with the BeNature approach of practical techniques for helping to improve those relationships.
And this is sort of where our program, Ballot Collect Manya, Walking Together, comes in. Ballot Collect Manya means to meet in the centre with many hands. So I think this diagram sort of accomplishes that. But the program is really about blending that JARA traditional knowledge with the science to support and create healthy and engaging environments for people to come and connect with nature and experience that connection. It really revolves around traditional owners and JARA people being the experts in connecting with country. Connection to country is sort of a much deeper term. To JARA, it directly translates to belonging to Mother Earth. So we directly belong to Mother Earth. We're not connected to it. We belong to it. But we also look to supplement and support and promote and integrate the overlaps with the Western science. We work to sort of activate sites that are close to nature, to provide those accessibility, and promote those existing values. And with a bit of love and care, we can turn those sites and spaces into something really special and engaging for the community.
And we invite the community, as well as government, land managers in to listen, learn and act. Everyone together side by side. And this is one of our yarning days, which means to talk and share stories and culture. And yarning is all about knowledge sharing, and it's the JARA way of doing things, not from the top down, but in a circle. And it helps to get people involved and active in their local environment, which is known to help build connections with it.
So way people and community can be involved in caring for country is through planting days, frequently with local volunteer groups and land care groups. We're planting thousands of native Australian plants and healing upside down country that had been damaged by the impacts of colonization and particularly mining. Research has shown that physical interaction with soil and the microbes it contains can have many neurobiological benefits. So yeah, directly touching soil activates well-being and builds connection. So if we can heal sites that have been impacted by mining, it's really, really important.
And we select species for scent, colour and feel because the senses matter. Jara culture and also Western science shows that smelling flowering plants and touching native grasses and seeing seasonal change all help to build stronger connections.
But they're not just food and fibre plants. They're tools, food and medicine. Food and fibre plants represent that knowledge passed on by the ancestors, which is used respectfully. And connection to country or belonging to nature or Mother Earth isn't a passive. It's completely active.
Another way we design for the senses is things like rock wells and rock textures, experiences that engage children and adults alike. So people aren't just looking, but they're feeling.
So this is what we call a yarning circle, which is sort of a gathering circle for conversation. And in the yarning circle, everyone's equal. Like Simon mentioned before, it's not a top-down approach. Everyone sits as an equal. No one's at the head of the table. So in this diagram, in this yarning circle, we're joined by our 18 apical ancestors. And their presence is not actually marked by the large stones around the seating place. But they're not just rocks and stones, they're guides, and they watch us as we connect over country and reconnect with nature. So this connection with nature is not just personal, it's an intergenerational connection.
We also use things like signage, and not just for information, but to share story and culture, which are important ways that Jara passes on knowledge and connection. We don't say keep out, we say come in and connect with country.
Traditional ceremony is another way that we pass on knowledge. It's a really important part of First Nations cultures all around the world and really critical to our deep relationship to Mother Earth. So this photo here is part of a welcome to country and a smoking ceremony where we invite people to be on country in good health and in good spirit. And it creates a space for respect and being present and to build relationships with the land and with each other and with the knowledge being shared.
And even things like our furniture have a role. Log seats and reclining lounges angled to the sky. They bring people closer to the 6 Jara layers of country, which are sky, wind, water, forest, ground and underground, and help people to see country in that deeper, more integrated way that Jara do. And just a little bit about where we want to head with all this work in the future. We've still got a lot to do, and we certainly want to do more monitoring of people's connection with country before, during and after works to see what effect that's having. And hopefully we could use something like Matteo shared early in his presentation with the circles showing the relationship between people and nature. But we'd really like to develop a Jara way of measuring connection to country to really tap into what that means in their culture. We want to keep working on additional sites. There's lots of work to do to heal country, especially upside down country, as Charlie mentioned. And we're going to dig deeper with a targeted bit of research with the JARA members, the traditional owners, to really dig into what this topic really means to them and why it's so meaningful and what they want to share with it, which will then help us, do some knowledge sharing. Looking at writing up what we're calling like a position paper to really capture what JARA's position and thoughts are on all of this, the traditional knowledge, concepts of connecting with country and the interrelationships with the emerging Western science. Hopefully going to hold a Connecting with Country forum to get interested people together and talk about all this work and where it can go in the future. And through that, looking to build collaborations with different partners.
Thanks, Simon. And I might note that position paper. There's really a sort of a starting point for this research, and for JARA or traditional owners, it'll help guide how we respond to this growing interest in the space, especially with Mateo's work. It'll really make sure we're proactive and leading the way in this industry and in this research, which is really exciting. But this diagram we have up at the moment, it sort of represents a flower. It's actually called a Murnong flower, which is named after the yam daisy, which is it's a traditional food source, and the plant you can eat it, and nourishes, regenerates you, and sustains. And this framework sort of works similar in the same way. So it sort of works around with JARA's shared purpose, strengthening that relationship with nature, that's respectful, culturally respectful, inclusive, and all about being on country.
So we invite you all to walk together with JARA. Hopefully today we've given you some insights into JARA people and JARA culture and their special relationship with their country, Jandak, and what the strong overlaps this has with the emerging Western science and the work we're doing to bring these areas together, and what all this can mean for the well-being of the people, of people and the planet. But together we can do more. Well, thank you.
Well, thanks a lot, Simon and Charlie. That was it was a very rich description of what you can bring, really, something that we really need to learn from the history, from the rich history that you have. And I think there is indeed a lot to learn. There's a lot of work that can be done together. And I agree. I agree that all this work can be done together. I agree that there's a big overlap between Western science and indigenous culture that we can bring, and we can ultimately create and shape together. I just would like to stop here, really. We have 3 more minutes. If anybody has any questions that would like to for any of the speakers, so please write them in the chat, or feel free to raise your hand. As I said, BeNature, the guide in the toolkit is the first tool, is the first product that this research and this effort, this collaboration has created together. And I think there is a fruitful collaboration. There is a synergy here to explore. There is a lot of work to be done together in order to bring the next products, in order to create actual change. And the idea behind BeNature is to mainstream ecocentric learning. learn from professionals, learn from indigenous cultures, learn from science, and mainstream and make sure that this learning process exists in everyone and is available to everyone, whether you're a policymaker, a business leader, or a child at school. I think that in the next couple of years, BeNature will develop further, and hopefully together with many of you. If there are any questions, otherwise I think we can. Well, I can say thank you to everybody who managed to join us for this 1.5 long session, and thank you for being here. Thank you everybody who spoke. Thank you for Simon and Charlie for coming all the way from Australia to give us some insights about what an indigenous perspective is and what connection to country really is. I hope there will be more possibilities in the future to work together. And unless there are any questions, I think we can stop the recording here. Yes, and